Summertime is a time to kick back, relax, and enjoy your time off. Well, maybe not. Summertime is a fertile time for Pinellas County school teachers due to the professional training that is offered. Many teachers take advantage of the opportunity to expand their knowledge and expertise for use in the classroom this fall and beyond. Included among the sessions offered this summer was an English language arts training at Dixie Hollins High School.
Before moving to the department.
Vince Burgess, Assistant Deputy Commissioner of Accountability, Research and Measurement, headlined the district-wide training with a look at some of the state's testing, how it's conducted, and even more important, how it's interpreted.
So we know that teachers have a lot of questions about how the test is scored and what the reports look like and so forth. So my goal today is to make sure that teachers understand the structure of the test, the scoring, how the writing contributes to the score overall, and what resources are available for them to prepare as they get ready to welcome the kids back for the new school year. How large-scale assessments like the FSA and FCAT before are scored is the most accurate way to score the test, but it's not always the easiest for the public to understand, teachers either. So we try to provide that explanation to give them a little more comfort in knowing that the test is a measurement of what students know and can do. Because the decision had been made to move away from PARCC and to develop a new assessment system, we needed to have a test that had ready-made, had assessment items that aligned to the Florida standards and were available for our use immediately. So we used items that had been previously used in another state. We went through a process to make sure that the items that we selected did assess what Florida students know and can do, to make sure that the test that students took in Florida and the statistics that we gathered off of their performance were true measures of students' mastery of the Florida standards. Moving forward, beginning with last year and moving forward this year, the way we developed the questions and put them together to make a test form are ways that we've done for years with all the other testing systems. So we're confident that the testing system from the beginning to the end, as long as we have it in place, is a good indicator of what students can do.
A wide variety of training was presented at various sites throughout the district. 35 different topics, as many as 3 sessions each, were conducted at Dixie Hollins, including a notebook foldables training presented by Susie.
I'm doing a workshop on notebook foldables. Notebooking is a technique that many teachers are already using, where they're using a spiral notebook or a composition notebook for students to record information and to demonstrate what they know and show what they know. What I'm doing is taking that notebook to a new level by adding 3-dimensional graphic organizers that are manipulative, that students can glue in and do some cuts so that they have different ways of chunking information and presenting information and remembering information as they study. They can use it as a note-taking device. They can also use it as a study device and as an assessment device. Notebooking, I think, has been very popular over the last decade, even 15 years. And as teachers, there was a lot of research showing the effectiveness of using notebooks. It helps students retain information, understand information, particularly vocabulary, and then adding the component of the foldable was developed by Donna Zyk she started 10 years ago and it growing and growing. She's an entrepreneur and an inventor, and she really is able to take information and help students learn it by creating manipulative pieces of paper and cutting them and folding them and gluing them so that it helps students learn. And we're adding that right to that notebook that they're already using. So it's a way to augment what teachers are already doing and take it up to the next level. Teachers are usually very excited about learning these techniques because they're already using a notebook and they want new strategies that make learning information and retaining information easier for their students. The notebook techniques are also really good for differentiation. It's easy to adapt them in different ways for the different styles of learners. So I find that teachers are very excited. High school teachers are particularly excited because they're always looking for new ways to make learning interesting for their students and maybe just make it a little more interactive. Rather than just sage on the stage, they want to get the students involved in the learning process. This helps do that. Students really embrace it. When I was in the classroom, I used these techniques, and I found that students they just prized their notebook, and because they had put so much individual effort into it, it became a very important possession to them, and they were very proud of their work and they wanted to do their best. And it was a good way that you could communicate with parents, and they could show their parents what they're learning in school, and the parents could understand what their students are doing on a daily basis. The first time you show a technique, it takes a little bit of time. After the first time, of course, it gets easier and easier, and before you know it, the kids are on autopilot. And in fact, I find that students will become very inventive, and they invent their own ways. And some new techniques that they weren't even shown or presented that I've never even seen before, and that always makes it very exciting when they come up with a really nice, bright, new idea that's very useful and really demonstrates a concept in another way. This book comes with a CD, and teachers can get more ideas, and in the hour workshop that I have, I can only show 6 ideas to fit into an hour. But it's chock full of more ideas, also more examples of using those ideas, as well as templates so the teachers can Xerox and use the templates, and also on the CD they can personalize the templates and download them for their individual subjects and their teaching goals.
Liz Priestley, adjunct instructor at St. Petersburg College, led a group on strategies for creative arts in the classroom.
Today we're talking about youth voice and creating safer spaces in our classroom to really encourage creative arts of any kind, but specifically spoken word poetry, because it has an ability to connect with young people and encourage them to express themselves in ways that I think our normal curriculum often does not. We watched a spoken word poem from a young woman who is from Washington, D.C., and she's a high schooler there. I think she's 17, 18 years old. And she was on a team from that city that competed at an international festival called Brave New Voices. And so it just happened this past July, so really just a few weeks ago. And I coached a team from Tampa and St. Pete that went up and competed as well. And so we watched the one poem from the young woman from D.C. as an example of just a talented young woman who is a young person talking about issues that are relevant to her and her personal experience, and also demonstrating a really complex understanding of her craft. So she's building really intense and extended metaphors. She has a lot of literary device in her poem, and using that effectively helps her get her message across. So I think it's very relatable to young people who maybe feel like the poetry they read in their textbook does not connect to them personally, or they don't understand the words on the page. And so I think the spoken word performance aspect of the poetry can really connect to young people's emotions, and it's on topics that they feel like matter to them more. And then as teachers, we can build those connections between the issues that that young woman is talking about and maybe a more traditional poet who is in our textbook, or maybe something going on in our community. I see a lot of my colleagues shifting to teaching methods that are more student-centered. So there's a pedagogy called student-centered learning, and a lot of similar ones that maybe reprioritize the way that classrooms work. And realizing that traditional models of learning have often treated the teacher as somebody who knows everything, and students the people who know nothing, and the teacher simply lecturing for an hour, 2 hours, however long the class is. And I think we know that that is not the best model for learning, because that is not how people learn, is just listening for an hour on end. You know, our attention span is not that long, and that's not how people absorb information. And so seeing a lot of my colleagues do more engaged learning, more interactive learning, things that ask students to like get up and move around, a little kinesthetic learning, ask them to connect to their personal experiences so they feel like the material in the classroom makes sense in their own lives. I think we're seeing maybe a wider and wider divide between our standard in the classroom and students' lives outside of it. And so trying to bridge that divide of, you know, we might be talking about Robert Frost, but that doesn't mean it's not relevant to your life. And so building that bridge between your experiences as a student and what we're talking about in the classroom. Basically, the goal of the workshop prompt is to have students construct an extended metaphor comparing an inanimate object to maybe some deeper emotion they want to explore. So they pick an inanimate object, maybe something like a penny, and they make connections to, you know, I am shiny, or I am not valuable. You know, so saying something about the penny, but then maybe also reflecting something they feel more deeply. And then the second line they have to write is, I want to be. So what would you like to be if you were not that thing? And then the third line is, I will overcome. So what kind of barrier or challenge exists that they want to overcome? And so it can be kind of reflective of their personal experience, or maybe just an emotion they want to explore for the sake of the poem. But they're really just building this kind of extended comparison between an inanimate object and some feeling of overcoming. And so it practices a little bit of the literary technique of building metaphor, word choice, things of that nature. But it also connects with them maybe on a deeper level in terms of what emotions are they experiencing that day, what do they want to get out, while still providing them a little bit of safety of, like, we're still talking about a penny. We're not necessarily talking about, like, this is Liz feeling unvaluable today, but it still gives them that outlet to express something.
A full classroom was on hand for the DOE's Angela as she discussed FSA writing and some of the tricks to take it to another level.
Okay, well, today's session was actually the third of multiple years of work that the state has been doing with the rollout of the new, or newer at that time, FSA rubric and writing expectations. We had a change in the expectation of our students and their writing and what they need to be able to deliver, and so we wanted to be able to provide resources and tools to the teachers. So we've done direct sessions with district curriculum specialists and coaches, and then last year I was here and able to work with teachers on really dissecting the standards and aligning them to the rubric components and what it asked for. So this year was great fun because we got to do an application process where the participants came in and I was not delivering them expertise or information. I was guiding and facilitating them in pulling out their strengths in their writing instruction so that when the students hit the classroom doors on Monday, they are feeling more prepared and positive about the experience of teaching writing. At the get-go, I had them focus on a strength, something that they felt they did really well in their writing instruction over this last year, because I believe in building on strengths. And so I felt like it was great for them to then hear from each other where they were at in their instructional practices, and so then they shared with each other what their strength was and how they went about making it a part of their automaticity of practice. I wanted to really have them experience what our students should be exposed to, and that's representations of research and information for them to synthesize and apply in their writing pieces. So I incorporated two very short, one was a minute and one was a minute and 20 seconds, to get their juices flowing on the topic, and then they have more in-depth examples of how to use either those videos or like videos in the classroom so that students can be more exposed to what's expected of them when they leave school, because our goal isn't just for them to do well on their FSA writing, but for them to be prepared to use writing as a communication piece when they're in the workforce. I wanted them to know what they bring to the table when their students enter the door, and I wanted them to also connect with each other as resources. That's why they shared their writing with each other and critiqued each other's, giving the positive feedback. We didn't want to focus on the areas of growth today. We wanted to focus on the areas of strength so that they could see what they're bringing into the classroom as writing instructors, and then also have a little bit more of a repertoire of people available to connect with to help them be more successful throughout the school year.
Perhaps the highlight of the day at Dixie Hollins High School came at the conclusion of the program when Sean McComb, the 2014 National Teacher of the Year, stepped forward with an inspiring and emotional presentation.
But when I look at this group of kids, I think about their stories. I was reading their college admissions essays at my dining room table one night, and I was, there's a bunch of essays that, like you would expect, a service trip, a friend who was important to them, a grandparent who changed their life, a bunch of those things. And then I got to a series of 8 essays in a row, somehow, that were just like a punch in the gut over and over again. 2 kids wrote about the day that they were evicted from their homes. Both of them, it was their 13th birthday. Crazy coincidences in the world. For one, it was the last day he saw his father. That was the day his father left his family, and he became the man of the house. For the other young lady, it was the day that her mom broke down and asked her to take over her family's finances, which she had then managed from that day on, right, to high school graduation. 2 kids wrote about watching parents fight substance abuse. 1 wrote about the power of seeing a parent overcome addiction. The other wrote about how defeating it was to see a parent succumb to addiction. A young lady who earned straight A's as she moved from standard to honors to AP courses throughout high school wrote about the day that the police knocked down the front door to her home at 5 in the morning to arrest her brother, who, unbeknownst to the family, had been selling drugs out of there. She came to school that day, like she came to school every single day in high school, and aced the test. Another young lady wrote about her battle with anorexia, right, and her battle with that eating disorder and the challenges there. I'm reading these back to back to back. And finally, one young lady wrote about herself, a teenage mother, what it was like as she was currently leaving an abusive home and couch surfing between friends' houses. I read these 8 essays in a row, but I know these kids, right? And so I know that they're also all going to go to 4-year colleges. And so I'm just like shocked beyond, like how are both of these things possible at once? So the next day I went and found them and talked to them one by one and asked them that question. How are you possible? Like how, I knew some of this, but I know all of this. How is it possible that you've done this given what you're going through? And to a student, to a person, in that conversation, within 1 or 2 minutes, they named a teacher. Some from kindergarten all the way through a teacher who they had at that current moment who believed in them, who saw things in them that they didn't see for themselves, who helped them believe that there was a future that they could go out there and get. Teachers just like you who don't hear it enough, and the kids sometimes don't come back and say it, but have the opportunity to shape and change lives every day we walk into that school building. Teachers who believe it's not just about their lessons, but it's about loving kids until they can love themselves. Teachers who know it's not just about their planning, but the persona that they bring into the classroom. We're trying to get across this idea of sparking hope, which is the opportunity to build into our students high expectations for the future and their belief in their ability to get there. And it starts with a relationship, so building an environment for kids where they feel a sense of belonging and value, and then helping them build some efficacy that they can grow their skills and they really see that they can be successful and can do this work, and then giving them work to do that they value. I've had a lot of great success working with some really great students. It's not easy, but what I find is that if kids know that I'm really on their team and that we're in this together and the goal is to help those kids move to where they want to go, that kids come on board. And it's not 100%, it's not always perfect, but when we're doing meaningful work together, that's a great experience both ways.
Nearpod Boot Camp was a popular destination for many Pinellas County teachers this summer. It's a relatively new application that has a wide range of uses in the classroom. Here's Jennifer Williams.
I started using it when it first came out in about 2012, and what I found as an educator is it was all about engagement. So allowing students to engage with technology in a meaningful way, and for me as a teacher, it was transformational with instruction. The great thing about Nearpod is it applies to any device, any student, so any age would be a great thing. And in my experience, it allowed me to, when my kids, we went one-to-one with devices, and all of a sudden they were behind their screens. So for me, it allowed me to connect with them and engage them in an interactive format. A big thing right now that they just came out with is virtual reality. So I can take my students on an immersive field trip within my classroom walls. And we can go anywhere. I've taken students to places like the Great Wall of China. They've gone to Washington, D.C. They can even go to Mars on a rover. So the virtual reality is a new feature that I found is fascinating with kids. Another thing that I really like is the Draw It feature. So I can embed any PDF document into or a photograph into my Nearpod presentation, and they can interact with it with the Draw It feature. So they can annotate right on there. I can have them circle things. I can have them comment on there. So the Draw It feature I love too. And I would say the third thing is the assessment piece. So after any Nearpod presentation, I as a teacher am able to get a teacher report which will give me information on all of the answers the students gave over the course of our lesson. Kids love it. They love to be able to feel empowered and feel that they're able to respond and direct the lesson. It's also great for collaboration. I think kids it's one thing they can do. They can work on one device. Like if you maybe have you don't have a class set and you maybe only have a few devices, you can have kids working together at stations or at centers, and they can work on one device with the Nearpod lesson. The kids really, what I'm seeing is they're really loving the virtual reality. They love these field trips they're able to go on to, which is one of the newer exciting features. What I found in the beginning of my presentation is I was able to, with Nearpod, we have a large group of teachers here today, so Pinellas County educators grades K through 2, and so what I was able to do with Nearpod is I was able to ascertain who has been, like what devices are they using in the classroom with the interactive feature. I was able to ask them and they gave me real-time feedback, and then I was able to get information on if they'd used Nearpod before, and I think 85% had never used it before. So this is a new tool for them. And it's a little different for them because they're K2. So I was here last week doing a session with teachers that teach older students, and so their needs are very different. So today we're looking at things they can do in the classroom with their own kids, so at the younger levels, so things with literacy and with math, but then also other things such as parent ed nights. So if they're doing open house for their parents, Nearpod's a great tool for that. Things like faculty meetings, things like global collaboration like we talked about, and interacting a lot with teams. So a lot of these teachers here today work within teams at their schools, so they're going to share their libraries and have shared presentations so they can work together.
My robotic friends. Sounds pretty cool, doesn't it? Well, it is cool, but it's not quite what you think. It's an activity that leads teachers in training through an unplugged activity that can later be utilized in the classroom by students to aid in their preparation to develop coding skills. Sarah Trulson has the story.
So one of the big movements today in education is getting kids into coding. So really getting them thinking about computer science and the possibilities of, having careers in that area, since there's going to be hundreds of thousands of job openings. And so today we're doing an activity with our teachers called My Robotic Friends, and basically it's considered an unplugged activity, so they don't have to have a computer to do it, and it gets them thinking about the vocabulary behind coding. So what's a function, what's an algorithm, and they basically have to write algorithms to tell their robots how to stack the cups in a certain way. And it really starts getting kids thinking like a computer scientist, so thinking about how programs work in a more kind of concrete way, so that they can then move into actually using a computer to write their own code. Basically what we do first is we talk to the students or the teachers about our language, so what's the vocabulary, how are they going to talk. We show them the symbols that they're going to use to write their code, so they have up arrows and down arrows and 90-degree turn arrows. And they have a group of folks that are known as the programmers, and one of them is the coder, who has to write out this code. So they have to write out the symbols to tell the robot that kind of leaves the room how they're going to stack the cups. Once they have their code down, then the robots come back in the room and they can't talk, so all they can do is look at this code of arrows that's been designed and use it to move a stack of plastic cups into certain shapes or configurations.
I kind of felt like I was behind the times a little bit. I mean, I've always been comfortable using technology, but the idea of actually understanding how technology is built and maybe, making it a non-threatening thing for me to learn makes me want to use it with my children. And actually my teaching partner and I were talking about what a great club this would make at our school, or even an enrichment, have children set some goals, and this would be a great thing that they would want to do. I mean, when they see the people that have been involved in coding and have set up this code.org, some of the people that create their video games and Facebook and, Bill Gates, I mean, all the big guys in technology, that they've created this to allow children to learn how to code. This is such an important skill for them to know going into the future, because technology is prevalent in everything that we do today, from our phones to our readers to what they're going to need to know when their jobs, when they grow up and need to get into the workforce. I think this is something really important for them to learn. And if we as teachers can learn more about it, then we can provide opportunities for them to become interested in the technology and the coding.
If they have issues, then they know they have to debug it. So if the robot does something, they follow the code and it doesn't work the way they think, then they have to kind of send the robot away, and they have to look at their code again and figure out where did they go wrong, what mistake did they make that they can fix. And what's cool about it too is the robots have that chance to really think critically as they're looking at all those symbols and think about what does it mean. And sometimes the robots even make mistakes, and we talk to them about what do you do on a computer if you think it's not functioning as it should. Well, you have to start it, you have to turn it off and turn it back on. So sometimes they have to restart their robot and let them try that again, just make sure they, it wasn't their mistake and not the code. Code.org is where these come from, and Tinkerspaces, and they really are K through 12 that they can do it. This particular activity works with age groups from kindergarten through high school to start, again, getting kids thinking about coding. We even have English teachers who are going to do it next year because they think it's a good way for the kids to build that culture in their classroom, but also kind of ride along with, hey kids, did you know that there are jobs out there when you graduate from high school that involve computer science, and you don't have to be a perfect mathematician or scientist to be able to be good at coding.
I'm actually one of the STEM Academy facilitators at my school for 4th and 5th graders. So we've done a little bit of coding through HTML, and we did a code.org hour of code back in December. But this was the first time I really did an activity with unplugged coding, where using the same concepts but more of a hands-on, away from a computer activity. And I thought it was great because it encouraged a lot more collaboration and conversation amongst the people in the group, where sometimes it is a little easy to get behind your computer screen. So I thought it was a great way to introduce coding without having the technology component just yet.
This particular activity would last for one class period, but we have some folks who it gives them extensive cards and cup stacks that they can do. So some of them start off really simple, maybe 3 cups, and they can get really huge and involve 12 or 13. So we have folks who actually do this activity a couple times throughout the school year, and then they eventually have the kids design their own cup stacks and write the code to make those work with their robots. So it's however they want to use it with their students. It'll last however long they need it to.
We felt as the instructional technology, academic computing department, that this was really important. But this is the first summer that we have incorporated it into our training with our teachers, and it went really well. After that kind of hands-on physical activity, we showed them some resources online and different ways to get their kids started with coding. We talked about ways that they could realistically kind of incorporate it into their classroom and with their kids, whether it's an after-school club or part of a technology center, just different ways to kind of infuse it. It correlates really well with, it goes along really well with math and science. And I know that the STEM department has been doing a little bit with coding already as well. We're just we also feel like it's a really important part, and it should be an important part of instructional technology. So this is our first time bringing it into summer training, and so far it's been great.
I think coding is just such an up-and-coming thing in our world, and we really need to prepare our students to be able to have careers, because pretty much any job you need some sort of technology literacy, even if you're not a software engineer. So I think it's wonderful to make it available to all students as early as kindergarten.
To find out more information about activities like this one, go to code.org, that's CODE.org, and you'll learn about this and tons of other unplugged activities so you can start infusing coding into your classroom.
And so another summer comes to a close, and it's back to the classroom. It has been a highly successful summer, short as it was, as Pinellas County Schools continue to stress professional development for its teachers in order to assure the best education possible for its students. I'm Chastity Downing. Thank you for being with us.